Ahoy and welcome. This is Admiral. Black Forest has always been a fan-favorite map that appeals to a certain crowd more than to others, particularly a large chunk of casual and team game players, myself included. With the last major patch came several changes to the old Black Forest map script. While this is far from the most newsworthy or controversial addition or alteration of late, I still think it deserves a moment in the spotlight, as most of the changes I think were for the worse, and I've seen that this is a common sentiment among many fans of that map. Here's a list of alterations according to the patch notes, although they've seemingly also made other changes that are not mentioned here, such as removing the roads that used to connect allied players in team games, which was my favorite visual feature on any map. Perhaps the wise men will suggest that this is an omen for Forgotten Empires losing their way. But we're not out of the woods yet. They've also really clamped down on nearly every feature of the map that was flavorful and exciting, removing the possibility of epic hunting grounds, cutting out most of the cool forest pockets, and drying up the luxurious lakes into piddling puddles at best. While I have to imagine that this was well-intentioned as an effort to bring balance to the forest, the end result, in my opinion, is a map that is significantly less interesting and has become over-standardized and over-sanitized in a way that reduces both its aesthetic appeal and its gameplay potential.
Boring!
While I applaud the developers for the interesting new maps they've introduced over the years, and for making Arabia more interesting with the introduction of chickens, along with the generally excellent game balance improvements, it's unfortunate that this long-loved map has become significantly less interesting. The only difference that I find unequivocally positive is the addition of new map themes, including some of the new terrains, but of course that could have been done without changing the other features. Even in the balance department, I think the old map generations were tolerable enough at least 95% of the time. And to the extent that they were a little wild, it often made for more interesting games. And I rarely encountered map gens where I thought the hunt, relic, or other resource distribution was lopsided to the point of no longer being fun. It's true that every now and then you'd find yourself as a flank in a 4v4 with an unusually wide, unwallable path, or Swiss cheese paths leading to the enemy team, and have to play it more open, or find that the enemy team had 3 out of the 4 lakes, and have to come up with a plan with your team on the fly to hit them before they could go too crazy on the fish boom. But even at its worst, this isn't something I would have changed. The sometimes slightly chaotic layout or spawns in Black Forest has always been part of the charm of the map for me. The old Black Forest struck a near-perfect balance of familiarity and flavor. You always had a specific enough idea of what you were getting, but there was enough variation in terrain features and resource placement to make exploring it feel like an adventure, and provide very high replayability. There's no question that this new version is more balanced, but that seems to have come at the cost of everything else, and to an extent that was completely excessive.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Honestly, those variable and unusual features of the old map have featured prominently in many of my favorite games on Black Forest. Whether it be brutal contests over bountiful hunting grounds, insane lures, villager sneaks into peculiar nooks, fantastic fish booms, or epic escapes into amply provisioned forest pockets in a chaotic free-for-all. Nearly all of this is out of the picture in this redesign that seems intended for a target audience other than most actual Black Forest fans, at least judging from player reactions that I've seen. My gut feeling is that players who didn't really care for Black Forest anyway, or who prefer absolute balance at the expense of variety and aesthetics, will feel somewhat positively towards these changes. But I suspect that most players who have been enjoyers of this unique map, perks and all, for many years, will find the changes odd and mostly unnecessary. Put another way, I think the map has had a mild upgrade from the likely perspective of very competitive players, but a major downgrade from the perspective of more longtime fans who go out of their way to choose Black Forest. I can understand hyper-optimizing a map for balance for purposes of a tournament or other highly competitive setting, or even adding a more balanced variation like T-West's Rage Forest into the standard pool, but I would definitely let people vote on this before replacing it outright. And it's rather unfortunate that you can no longer even play the old Black Forest map in a lobby without a mod. Although if you don't mind using a mod, you can find it here. But mostly I just find these changes odd and unnecessary. If you wanted a more balanced version of Black Forest, as I've said, we already had Rage Forest, which is already used in tournaments and could just join the official pool. If you wanted a heavily forested map with more straightforward paths and balanced resource generation, and without the possible nuisance of lakes or enclosed forest pockets, we already have Amazon Tunnel. To wrap up my thoughts, this rework misses the forest for the trees. It optimizes for uncalled for levels of balance in a boring and heavy-handed way, and on a map which has traditionally catered to a player core who largely enjoyed the map's flavor and variety over pure balance. Although of course I don't claim to speak for everyone, and if you do feel otherwise and enjoy most or all of the changes, you can let me know in the comments. And I do also have a poll you can vote in to voice your thoughts on the new map script relative to the old. Speaking for myself though, my recommendation is simple.
Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me!
If the developers are super attached to this new map script, they can name it Bland Forests, and let it sink or swim in the map pool based on player choice, and in competition with the OG fan favorite map, Black Forest. But I'd suggest restoring the old Black Forest map with few or no changes, perhaps apart from updating it to include the new terrains, or at the bare minimum, reintroduce the old map script officially and call it Legacy or Classic Black Forest, so that people can actually vote on it, or play it in lobbies without having to hunt down a mod. Anyway, those are my thoughts, but what do you think? Let me know in the poll and in the comments. This has been me blasting the blandification of the beloved, barely balanced, but rarely bad or boring beauty that was Black Forest. Till next time.